Everybody, welcome back to The Varied Life. I'm Steve, the retired hobby tech guy who is currently an American expat here in South Korea. And today we're going to be talking about some interesting stuff. We're going to talk about Vietnam. Will they ever get a retirement visa program up and running? This has been something, recently somebody sent me a message asking about Vietnam because they had taken a trip to Vietnam and was wondering if there was a retirement visa system in Vietnam. And unfortunately, there's not. Now, there has been a lot of stuff going on because with Vietnam, I think the earliest that I remember hearing about a retirement system, retirement visa system, kind of similar to the Philippines or Thailand, or I think Cambodia even has a retirement system. But along those lines, the earliest I remember was like 2019, 2020. And I just remember it in passing, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the government was talking about, hey, we're gonna jump on the retirement visa train. We're gonna get the largest segment of the U.S. population, the baby boomers and the Gen Xers, people in my group, from 1965 to however long, I don't know. But yeah, that's a huge segment of the U.S. population, and the average Social Security is like $1,900 a month is the average Social Security paycheck. So of course those are going to be skewed because you have people that get the max amount, then you get people that get a minimum amount. So there's a little bit of leeway there. But generally you could probably say, anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500 a month is probably a good estimate on the majority of retirees on Social Security. So if you want to even include it, let's drop it down to $1,000 to $1,500, and you've got a huge segment of the population, retirees that are ready to settle down, retirees that are going to need medical care, retirees that are going to eventually need assisted living and all of that stuff, and with that can bring in a lot of money, and not only that, but that is the largest demographic that holds, I think, the most amount of money in the United States. And then subsequent generations after that, it doesn't look good for them. It doesn't look good for them for retirement because the majority of them haven't socked enough money away for retirement, and or they haven't worked jobs where there was pensions available. Thankfully, I've been able to work a job in the military where there was a pension, and now even the military is offering, some military branches are offering, you don't want a monthly pension, Lord forbid, that would cost us too much. What you want is a 401k. So that's definitely a fact that's going to affect how people retire if they retire. But it's not looking good for the following generations and millennials and all of that stuff because, that's a whole nother video. But we'll get away from that, and we're going to talk about Vietnam. And again, they've been talking about having a visa retirement program. And some people have been asking, well, what about retiring in Vietnam? I went there and it was a great place. People are friendly. Absolutely. Looking to take a trip there ourselves one of these days. It's one of the biggest coffee. They're huge coffee people. And if you know me, I'm huge and I love coffee. So, I do my own espressos, take the roasted beans, and I've got a batch of freshly roasted coffee waiting to degas. And it's going to be good. But I digress. But Vietnam doesn't have a retirement visa. They've talked about it, like I said, since about 2019, and nothing has ever come to fruition. So that shows that there's a little bit of instability in the country itself. But some of the things about Vietnam is very interesting. It's an up-and-coming country, okay? And the average monthly paycheck for a Vietnamese person is $300 a month. So when we're talking about a destination where the U.S. dollar will go further, excuse me, Vietnam is definitely on that list because, if the average person makes $300 a month and they're able to survive, I'm pretty darn sure a retiree that's making $1,000 to $1,500 a month or more, you're making what, 3 to 5 times the amount of what the average Vietnamese person makes in a month off your Social Security. Yeah, Vietnam is in dire need of a retirement program system that is comparable to Thailand, Philippines, some other countries where, it's just ripe for the picking. But unfortunately, the government and whatever's going on there is just not coming into play. And we're going to take a look at some information. So let's jump right into it. There isn't a dedicated category for foreign retirees to live in Vietnam long term, proving sufficient retirement income or savings. So usually what you'll end up seeing is there will be countries that will have a monetary requirement of saying, hey, you have to have X amount of money coming in from pensions, certified funds, or combination of the both or whatever. Social Security being one of those, military pensions being another. Money market, and as long as you can usually show like a year's worth of steady income that meets the income or the monetary requirements for that country, they're pretty much happy. You submit some tax returns, federal tax returns, so some bank statements or a recapitulation of what you've made over the year or two, then that's probably about the biggest hurdle. There's always bureaucracy that has to be done with immigration. Some countries are better than others, and of course there's the language barrier that comes into play. But this shouldn't be a thing for Vietnam. Vietnam should be jumping on retirement visas because, like I said, the United States baby boomers and Gen Xers are the largest population. They have a huge amount of disposable money and invested money, and that could go a long way to helping out. And so it's a bonus for Vietnam. It would be a bonus for the retirees. But the thing is, if they wait too long and they just don't come up with a system, eventually all the baby boomers are going to be dead. And then you're just going to have the Gen Xers like me, and I'm 58. I retired early. We retired early here in Korea and overseas. But eventually those people are going to get old and they're going to pass away. So there is some time that Vietnam and other countries that don't have a retirement system can do that and put in a program. But if you wait too long, you're going to get to a point of where old people, they want to settle down, they want to move once and that's it. And whatever country provides them the best services or the best bang for their retirement buck, those are the countries of which they're going to move, and they will live there rest of their lives there. And until they pass away, there's going to be a floodgate of money coming into that country or countries that support and have a retirement visa system. So, yeah, there are ways, I should say, for people to stay in Vietnam, and we're going to look at some of these. And a tourist visa. Many retirees utilize tourist visas. Vietnam now offers a 90-day multi-entry e-visa for citizens, like many other countries. However, this still requires leaving the country every 90 days. In other words, doing a border run or a visa run to reset that stay. Now, other countries have done this as well to kind of get over the financial requirements of retirement visas. Thailand and some other countries, people will jump the border and do a border run. People will, be in a country and then they'll take a day trip and they'll just cross the border, spend the night, or even just turn right around. Go hit a coffee, boom, down that, come back into the country and get another 90 days. However, we've seen an influx of countries that are, before they would just kind of turn a blind eye, yeah, do your border run, go ahead, whatever. Did you have good coffee? Yeah, I did. Okay, come on, boom, you get another 90 days. But some countries are cracking down on this type of hack, to put it mildly. Some people are saying, hey, you can only do 3 or 4, maybe only doing 1 or 2. And even countries like Korea are kind of cracking down and saying, hey, you can only get so many exemptions. You can only do this so many amount of times. And then, yeah, you're out of here. So they're trying to get rid of the undesirable people that will abuse the system and commit crimes in those countries. So that's why a lot of countries are, excuse me, are cracking down on this type of immigration fraud, if you will. They're abusing the system. But it ends up, like it says here, while feasible, it's truly not a long-term residency solution. It relies on continued availability and ease of obtaining these visas. It's easy to obtain a tourist visa, but if the governments and the country start cracking down on the people that are abusing those, you might be able to extend once, and then that's it. And then I've seen stories and reports of people who had done border runs multiple times, stayed 5 and 10 years, and now suddenly it's like, yeah, you're done. You can't come back into the country. And these people have apartments. They have all their stuff because they've been living there for 5 or 10 years or so, and they're not allowed back into the country. They have bank accounts and so on and so forth. They have assets and things, and they're not allowed back into the country. So imagine what that does and how that upsets the apple cart. And there's probably some really good people that do that, that do these border runs, and they're not a problem. They're not criminals. They're good people. They just fall below that income requirement for the retirement visas. But with those countries cracking down on such activities, yeah, they're going to have to find another place to go. Another thing you could end up doing, some retirees might explore, excuse me, setting up a small business or an investment to qualify for long-term visas like DN or DT visas, and potentially a temporary resident card. And I think with Vietnam, there's a possibility of becoming a citizen after staying, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 7 years. So 7 years, if you're there legally, you could apply for citizenship or permanent residence, something to that nature. This requires a significant capital and genuine business activity, which isn't purely retirement. So, and I've seen this in Korea as well. There are some people that say, oh, I love Korea, I want to stay in Korea. But what I want to end up doing is I want to stay in Korea. So they will do an educational visa, and they'll take language classes, and that allows them in, or they want to do a work vacation visa, or they want to set up a business, so they'll incorporate a business, and they're able to stay a couple of years or whatever that is. And the interesting thing about that is that's not a long-term sustainable solution. And I've actually seen people on YouTube making videos showing, hey, well, here's how you incorporate, here's how you make a business. And it's legal, but it seems unethical. if you kind of understand what I'm doing, because some people are like, hey, I'm doing a business, and then it's like, but are you really doing a business? And it's very, very questionable, because from the outset of some of these videos, these people are actually telling people and saying, hey, if you want to stay in Korea longer, but there's no other way to do that, here's a way that you can skirt that system or those requirements, because Korea doesn't have a retirement visa system like, Thailand or other countries. So they have to come up with other means or ways in which they can get past those and kind of go into some other area. So, it's on the verge of being unethical. And I think with immigration problems that are in Korea, Korean immigration is going to clamp down on those people. And if you don't have a viable business that produces X amount of funds or whatever, you could find yourself, I'm just guessing, I'm looking inside the crystal ball saying, no, okay, well, what do we see here? Yeah, I see immigration cracking down on that eventually. And, it all depends on politics, who's the current administration, what they're looking for. There's some people, because in case you didn't know, Korea just impeached their president. He got kicked out, Yoon, for declaring martial law, so he's out. But now that leaves elections are going to be in June. And there's some people that are kind of voicing and saying that they might run, and some people you don't want to run because it would be detrimental to foreign investment, retirees, people like myself who are here, me and my wife, and there's a possibility if certain people get into power, they could really upset the apple cart and make it harder for people like me. So, and, it could be we're grandfathered in. That's a possibility. But again, these are a lot of what if scenarios, and you can get worried and all that. I'm not going to get worried about that stuff. So let's get back to Vietnam, and you have family-based visas. So in other words, a 5-year visa exemption if you're married to a Vietnamese citizen, or parents or children. Foreigners can apply for visas or a 5-year visa exemption certificate, which allows them longer stays. This is a viable path for those who have direct family ties. So guys, gals, if you marry a Vietnamese national, boom, there's your visa thing. So I don't know, hit up the dating sites, I guess. But if you're already married, that kind of knocks the wind out of your sails. They don't do polygamy. So yeah, there are different things with that. And another way to stay in Vietnam longer is through, having a spouse who is a Vietnamese citizen, or, like the things that they talked about. Temporary resident card offers longer stays, typically 1 to 5 years, but are usually linked to work permits. Investment visas or family-based visas like the TT are generally not available for someone just wanting to retire without those underlying qualifications. And we get down here, it says, in summary, while retiring in Vietnam is popular due to the low cost of living, again, the average Vietnamese makes $300 a month. What is the average Social Security? It's around $1,900 a month. But again, we're looking at a huge segment, around $1,000 to $1,500 or even $1,900. That is a lot of money to throw away by not having a visa system. Most rely on tourist visas and periodic border runs, which lacks the security and simplicity of a formal retirement visa program. You should always check the latest regulations of the embassy or consulate in your country where you are planning to retire or stay as long as you can, and renew things like those tourist visas every 90 days. So yeah, a lot of stuff is going on with visas and things like that, and it's just not. It's not something that, let me do a little bit of adjustment here. My OCD is like going at me. And let me see, can I do this? Can I do this? And then I'll do this and make this a little bigger. Yeah. But yeah, that is what we end up seeing with Vietnam. There's a lot of times where Vietnam is, put in the news, oh, they're going to come out with a retirement visa system. And then, people get excited, and the next thing you know, the government's like, we're not going to do anything. No, forget all that. It's just not. And then they go on to do other things. But like I said, they're losing out on a ton of money. If you could offer a visa system that has monetary requirements of $1,000 to $1,500. Let's say you have a $1,500 income requirement, retirement income requirement visa. That's like 5 times the amount of the average Vietnamese person. So a lot of that is going to be for housing. You're going to have medical insurance. You're going to have, you're going to, again, we talked about rent, food, utilities, all of these things. And then you're going to have retirees that you could have kind of like similar to Thailand, where you could buy condos. You can't own property in Vietnam. Foreigners can't anyway, but you could do like a leasehold. So in other words, if let's say you have a condominium and it ends up that kind of like similar to Thailand, 60% can go to foreigners and 40% goes to, the native people that are living there, the citizens of that country, or vice versa, whatever it is. You could set up something similar like that. And if you provide a good service and you provide a place for these people to live, I can tell you, if you make the retirees happy, they'll stay. But if you jerk them around, they kind of like what Malaysia did, and we'll talk about Malaysia. people will leave and they'll say, you know what, I've got retirement money, I have savings, I sold my home in the United States or properties or whatever, and I've got a couple of pensions, maybe I got Social Security and disability or whatever. They've got multiple streams of income, and they're just ready to put down roots and retire. But if a country screws them over, they will go to another country and not get screwed over, and that all of that money will go to the country that they go to. So I think Vietnam needs to really think about this. And they're missing out on an awesome opportunity because, Gen Xers or baby boomers are basically out. They're almost done. And now you're going to have Gen Xers. And then after that, you're not going to have a lot of money through retirees and visa systems because they're making less and less. They're not saving. There's not a lot of pensions that are left over. So yeah, it's a concern. And I think Vietnam and other countries that have kind of in that same, I don't want to call them third world countries, but countries that have lower monthly requirements for living, they need to step up their game, and if they don't, they're going to lose that piece of the pie. So yeah, it's just something that we need to take a look at here. Where did my stuff go? I had stuff. Okay, I think I got my stuff back. Let's see, what else do we end up having? Let's talk about Malaysia and my second home program. So we're gonna talk about that. Let me see if we can do this. Click, boom, and there we are. Malaysia, my MM2H, my Malaysia second home, is a retirement system that Malaysia did that was pretty cool. The monetary requirement used to be like $1,000 a month, and then it changed. And unfortunately, it just kind of went the way of the dodo. Let me see. Let me see. No, is that it? Yeah, I think that's it. The federal MM2H program is what we're going to talk about. Then we'll talk about the Sarawak one, which is a little bit different. Think of it as different jurisdictions or like a different state within Malaysia itself. But the main one, the federal MM2H program, really just kicked a bunch of people in the balls because it used to be like $1,000 a month or $1,200 a month, and you could go and retire. And Malaysia is clean, and it's the pictures and everything I've seen from it and talked to people who have been there are like, yeah, that is definitely a retirement destination consideration because of, they've got good medical, they've got a good program, streets are clean, people are nice, crime is low, all of that. And there's a lot of people that like that, but they changed their system. So we're going to talk about that. Again, the federal system that they ended up having, Sarawak has their own requirements, can be updated by the Malaysian government, which it recently did to the detriment of retirees. Always check with official sources. Blah, 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 must be submitted through licensed agents. Core requirements of all tiers unless specified age. You got to be 30 years old or above. So there's actually people that have income and retire at 30. I couldn't imagine that. That'd be crazy. I mean, I retired early at 53, 54. Nationality, all citizens of all countries recognized by Malaysia. Financial requirements, which is the main differentiator. Applicants must have a fixed deposit in a Malaysian bank. You have silver, gold, and platinum, so you're looking at 105,000, 420,000, and 1 million. So, and the RM is their money system. After 1 year, participants may withdraw up to 50% of the principal for approved expenditures, mainly property, healthcare, tourism activities within Malaysia, children's education, so on and so forth. A minimum balance must be maintained throughout the stay. Now, they also had a monthly amount, which is, again, about $1,000 or $1,200 a month. They changed that to where the monthly requirement is like $8,000 or $9,000 a month. So thankfully, a bunch of people that were there and applied, they were grandfathered in. So you have somebody over there that's making $1,200 a month off of Social Security, and they're more than capable of retiring and paying their rent, their utilities, and even saving money in Malaysia. And they do background checks and so on and so forth. They were grandfathered in, but imagine if they weren't grandfathered in. But basically, what Malaysia ended up doing with that retirement system is they looked and they saw, oh, well, we want a ton of money, so we're going to raise the income requirements for our MM2, Malaysia, my Malaysia second home income requirement, and it went from like $1,000 up to like $8,000 or $9,000 a month, and that just doesn't make any sense, because you're throwing away, you're hoping that you're going to get a bunch of people that are making $8,000 or $9,000 a month in retirement, and you're going to ignore everybody else who makes less than that, even though the majority of people that retire make less than that, and they're just hoping that, well, if we get a bunch of people that are making $8,000 or $9,000 a month, we're going to cash in. But the problem is they only had like 300 or 500 applicants for that, and it was way less than what they thought. They thought everybody's made of money, and we're going to have a ton of people that are making $8,000 or $9,000 a month in retirement, and they're just going to flood Malaysia, and we're just going to make all of that money. It didn't end up that way. I think they had about 300 and some odd applicants, maybe 500, but it was definitely less than 500. And it was kind of a kick in the balls, because I think they're starting to realize, now all the people that have Social Security retirements that are making $1,000, $1,500 or $1,900 or $1,900, which is the average Social Security check in the United States, they went to other countries. So when you kick somebody in the balls, they're not going to let you kick them again. So all those people left. and a bunch of people were grandfathered in, but from this point on, when they enacted that, any future or possible retirees that look at Malaysia are going to look at Malaysia now and see, I need what, $8,000-9,000 a month? There's no way. Buy Malaysia, I'll come and visit on vacation, but I'm not going to retire there. And they're going to go to Thailand, Philippines, a myriad of other countries that have retiree visa options that are more palatable, and those countries are going to make bank. So you can either have, like with Malaysia, my second home, let's say they got 500 applicants, which is woefully short than what they thought they were going to get, thousands and thousands of people. But they only got 500. So when you do the math, it ends up that, what is that? Let's just say $8,000 a month times 500. That ends up being $4 million a year. That's $4 million a year. But now, let's say if you have 1,500 is, let's just take the average of Social Security, which is like 1,925 is the average Social Security check. And we do that by what? Same thing, 500. What does that come out to? That comes out to 960, but you're going to have a ton more people. So let's say you have 3,000. So 1,925 times, let's say 5,000. Boom, you get $9,625,000 a month per 5,000 people. 5,000 people is easy to get when you're talking about people on Social Security from the United States, and their average pay is $1,900, or their check is average of $1,925 a month. So basically, what they were hoping is that, we're gonna up the monthly monetary requirement. We're going to make bank, and they found out that most people don't have that much. Most people don't retire with that much. You're talking about getting into the point of the top 10%. And when you talk about people in retirement, the top 1% of the global world, to be part of that top 1% of retirement, you're talking that's only like $32,000 or $35,000 a year. So again, you're looking at countries that are third world, fourth world, and then developed and industrialized countries. But yeah, it's they went so far beyond the scope of what the biggest segment of society that can retire and the funds that they make, and they basically just said, "Hey, take that and kick you in the balls and have a nice day." And some other countries that have lower requirements, like Philippines or Thailand or what are some other countries? Portugal. There's a bunch of European countries that have retirement visas. You got Puerto Rico. What is Belize? You have other countries that are like just chomping at the bit. Hey, yeah, bring your $1,500 or $1,900 a month, and boom, we have a retirement visa for you. Even Thailand has. They've got their tiered system where you can pay up to $60,000 and get a 20-year visa or some. They have that, but they also have a yearly visa that you can get, so you have to renew every year, but the requirements on that are nowhere near what Malaysia My Second Home has. So yeah, it's just unfortunate that a lot of these places, and especially Malaysia, that just ended up, it's just crazy. But let's take a look at the Sarawak for Malaysia, because they have a different type of system. So we'll take a look at this. So Sarawak MM2H is managed by the Sarawak state government, and they have different requirements than the federal. So somebody had asked me, because we had been considering Malaysia, and when I saw that Malaysia had increased the monthly requirements, it's like, well, that was a kick in the balls and knocked a lot of people out of the park. So, but then I heard about Sarawak, and it ends up historically has been considered more accessible and stable in its requirements compared to the fluctuations of the federal program. Subject to change, as with any government program, things can change in a heartbeat. So kind of like we talked about those people that would do a 90-day tourist visa, jump the border, stay another 90 days. Some people are finding out in some countries that you can only do that twice and you're done. The requirements on this are use age categories of varying financial requirements. Age 50 and above, open standard, to show that you have a monthly offshore income or government approved pension fund of 10,000 REM or 7,000 for the individual. And I forgot to, seriously, really? I got to figure out what that is. Let me see. Let's just say 10,000 RM to USD. That comes out to 2250 is basically what that is for conversion to Malaysian ringgits. So if we take a look at that here, the Malaysian ringgit thing, if you do the exchange, yeah, 10,000 down here on the bottom is 2250, 5,000 is 12 or 1124. So yeah, we get into that there. So yeah, 2250 or 7,000. So you're going to be about $1,000 a month. So they kept that minimal amount for retirees in Sarawak for the Malaysian My Second Home. Option B is property. Purchase residential property within a minimum value of 600,000, which I don't know. What is 600,000? 600,000. That ends up to US dollars, ends up $134,000. Okay, so that's not too bad. Because most retirees will sell their property, which they've been trying to pay off, and they have a lot of retirees that go overseas that I have talked with or chatted with online and texted and all that stuff. A lot of them had a house or multiple properties that they paid off, and that allowed them to buy property in an overseas location, kind of similar to what we did. So that's not out of the question. 134,000, that's entirely doable for a lot of people. And then we have another age category, 40 to 49, and again, you're talking about that monetary requirement, 10,000 or 7,000, and place a fixed deposit of 300,000 for a couple or 150,000 for the individual. So 150,000, let's see what that is. It's about $33,000. So that's entirely doable as well. Then you have another age category, 30 to 39. Again, that monthly requirement is the same, couples and individuals, and 300,000, 150,000 must have children enrolled in school. Again, they're looking at the family units because if you can keep the family there and the kids are in school, pretty much those people will be locked into your country for quite a long time. And if they're happy, they'll just stay. They'll stay in their 30s and 40s, and then they'll stay when they get older, and they probably won't leave. So it's kind of a smart thing of what Sarawak ended up doing. Long-term medical care. Open to those age 30 and above seeking long-term medical care in Sarawak. Must provide medical condition of a registered government private physician. Placed a fixed deposit. No proof of income is typically required for this specific category, but financial capability for treatment must be evident. So in other words, if you're think of an assisted living facility as you get older, whatever conditions that you end up having, you're able to pay for that. But you're going to be pretty much messed up. So hopefully I don't have to go through that. Fixed deposit details must be placed in a Sarawak bank. After 1 year, you can withdraw up to 40% for approved property purchase, car, medical expenses, children's education, etc. Minimum balance must be maintained throughout the program duration, which it's not too bad of a requirement if you think about it. And in the light of retirees who have been saving and saving and saving, paid off their properties, maybe they got 1 or 2 pensions coming in along with Social Security, or 1 pension and Social Security, something of that nature, they're going to have some money. So that's not an unrealistic requirement there. Minimum stay, participants must reside in Sarawak for a minimum of 30 days per year. This is significantly less than the federal MM2H requirement. Now, this is something that a lot of people that I've been researching different retirement destinations where these people were like, okay, 30 days a year. You buy a property, boom, you could rent it out, do the Airbnb thing, or even if, turn it into a rental. There's talk about things like that. You'd have to get into the details. I'm not saying that you can do that, but from what people and things I've read, apparently you can do that. But only 30 days a year, that's not a bad requirement. Because let's say if you go to Malaysia and you retire there for 6 months out of the year, and then you want to go live in some other country for another 6 months, the last part of the year, or whatever it is, different part of the year, you're able to do that. So that gives you some huge flexibility as a retiree. And if you're still ambulatory and can walk around and take trains, planes, automobiles, and taxis and go visit and go on vacations, this is a great thing to have. And so I think that's a great requirement. It's well thought out. 30 days a year is not bad at all. When you're a retiree, all the days blend into each other anyway. And next thing you know, a month is already gone, 6 months is gone. Wow, where does time go? Time flies, people. Past duration and renewal. So the Sarawak MM2H is typically granted for 10 years, often issued in 2 5-year stages, and it is renewable. That is going to be a huge thing. When you have... Because I think that is a huge consideration for people, and in case we get to what I'm reading here, this is what we're talking about, is 2 5-year stages. So you can do 10 years, but like every 5 years you have to kind of renew or intent to stay another 5 years. Usually it's kind of like some countries when you renew, it's done online. You pay a very small fee. Here in Korea, our visas, our F1 and F4 visas, we have to renew every 2 years. And there's a possibility that we could get longer terms. But currently right now, every 2 years we have to renew. But another draw for retirees is how much interaction do you have in the bureaucracy of the immigration system. And if you have to do it every 90 days, if you have to do it every year, that can get taxing, that can get tiring, it can be frustrating. And I know there's retirees out there that have been in countries that say, hey, you have to renew every single year. And as people get older, they get tired of that. Unless it's an automated online system that doesn't require a lot of work. There's retirees that I know that have left countries that have, yearly renewals, and they go to a country where now they don't have to renew every single year or every 6 months or whatever it is. They're going for something that makes it easier for them when it comes to renewal. Medical requirements. Submit a medical report of a registered medical practitioner, which could be done in Malaysia, Sarawak, and basically what they want is just a general basic medical. They don't want you to have some crazy diseases and venereal diseases and a bunch of other stuff. They don't want that. They want good, healthy people. So, which makes sense, because good, healthy people generally live longer, and then you get more money. And you're not a drain on society. Letter of good conduct, like a police clearance certificate from your country of origin. So in other words, kind of like an FBI background check for those of us in the United States, similar to what we had to do here in Korea. Just get a background check saying, yeah, I'm not a drug dealer, I don't gangbang, I'm just a retiree, and just want to retire and enjoy my golden years. Dependents. Successful applicants can bring dependents, spouse, unmarried children below 21 years, unmarried children with disabilities. So that is, they really put a lot of thought into this, because I've had people contact me about retiring here in Korea, people that have children, adult children who have disabilities where they can't survive on their own, so their parents take care of them, even though they're past the age of 21. So for Malaysia, Sarawak to have this type of consideration, that is another draw for people. It's a small niche, a small demographic, but it still shows a lot of compassion. And I think that's very important. So I've chatted with some people who had the federal Malaysia program, and even though they're grandfathered in, they're thinking about changing over to the Sarawak. And you can, and again, let's say if you go to Sarawak and you only have to stay there 30 days out of the year, that's a loophole that you could stay in Malaysia and move to basically a different state in Malaysia, as long as you just go back to Sarawak for 30 days out of the year. So you could technically retire in Sarawak, just stay there 30 days a year, and then you could go live in other parts of Malaysia with no problem, because the federal recognizes the Sarawak, at least at this time, and that could change, just like anything else that can change. So that's what people have told me that are like, hey, this was too expensive, I'm doing the Sarawak, but I found out, I'll just spend 30 days at my in my condo, and then if I want to live in other parts of Malaysia for multiple months out of the year, they're free to do that, and they're covered because the federal system accepts the Sarawak MM2H. Sponsorship. Applicants are typically submitted through agents, kind of like immigration attorneys. Local Sarawak sponsor might be required, often facilitated by the agent. And that's kind of what we end up having there. So let's get back to the key differences. Generally lower FD and clearer income requirements compared to the high FD tiers of the federal program, which is going to draw a lot of people. They're already seeing that the federal program drove a lot of people away, and they, like I said, they only had like 300, maybe 500 at most that applied for the $8,000 a month retirement requirement. So they're missing out on a ton of people that have disposable income, savings to buy condos, properties, houses, cars, all of that stuff, utilities, food, insurance. They're missing out on a gold mine by putting and setting that requirement income so high. And hopefully they'll get a clue and change that. But Sarawak understands that, so at least at this time. Clearly links property purchase to potentially reducing the required FD amount. age-specific pathways, clear categories based on age, sometimes linked to investment or children's education. Stability requirements have been historically more stable with Sarawak MM2H than the federal program. Location, benefits, and requirements are tied specifically to Sarawak, but again, you only have to stay there 30 days out of the year, so that means that you could go other places in Malaysia or other countries. Again, always consult official immigration sources to get the most up-to-date information. Imagine that. What are the odds? So yeah, that's what we got going on. Talking about overseas retirement, kind of a summary of what's going up. Vietnam is still dragging their feet. We've been talking about it since 2019, and unfortunately, Vietnam just is like, we talk about it, and everybody gets excited, and then it goes away, and they don't do anything. And so people leave, and retirees that only have a limited amount of time on Earth are going to go to countries that have a good retirement visa program. Korea. Let's look at Korea. Korea does not have a retirement visa program unless they have a business investment program, but we're talking millions and millions of dollars. And that kind of puts that throws away the demographic of people that are making, Social Security $1,000 to $2,000 a month. That just doesn't work. So how am I able to stay in Korea on the visa that we have? Well, my wife was a Korean citizen. She became an American citizen, and Korea has a visa system that allows for people with Korean ancestry to come back to Korea and have a visa. And then I have a visa that's attached to my wife because I'm her spouse. So that's how we're able to stay in Korea. And we have a 2-year term, and every 2 years, basically every year and 6 months or so, or 8 months or whatever, we have to renew our visas and we're good to go. Minimal bureaucracy. It's not that huge of a deal. It's not like some other countries where you're like, I hate the renewal year because it's such a pain in the butt and so much disinformation. People are slow and they don't do their job and things change and it's just frustrating. People are going to go to countries where they don't have a lot of problems. And thankfully for us, because of my wife's Korean ancestry, we're able to stay here in Korea. But we're also open to other retirement destinations, and that's why I'm looking into this stuff. And so when people ask me about Vietnam, I was like, yeah, I'd be interested in that too, because Vietnam, they're a big coffee culture, and I love the coffee. I brew my own espressos. Matter of fact, I just got a delivery of freshly roasted beans from Cupper Coffee here in Korea, which is some incredible house blend coffee. They also do, what was the other one they had? Antigua. They sent us a little sample pack of beans, and that was really good. Kind of chocolatey, earthy tasting. That wasn't anything to sneeze at either. So, yeah, I'm a big coffee guy, and Vietnam is a huge coffee culture. So, one of these days we're going to go to Vietnam and visit and vacation, and we'll see how that goes. So anyway, that pretty much sums up what's going on with Vietnam and talking about the visa system. They don't have one yet for retirees. So it is what it is. We talked about Malaysia, My Second Home, the federal program versus the Sarawak program. And it seems like the Sarawak program, they've got their head screwed on straight, and that's more beneficial for retirees, baby boomers and Gen Xers who are making that $1,000 to $1,900 a month on Social Security or whatever income that they have within that price range. Sarawak is coming out ahead. And the federal program, they're finding out that, that's been a kick in the balls to people, and people don't like being kicked in the balls. So they're going to go to places where they don't get kicked in the balls. So, that's what we got going on. Let's see. Other than that, we're going to close out this video. If you have any questions, concerns, tips, tricks, or you just want to say hi, there's the email address down there, officialthevariedlife@gmail.com, and I answer every single email. Even the crazy people. I have crazy people from time to time, but mostly educated people and smart people, good people like yourselves. I answer all of those, and then the one or two crazies, I even answer them as well. So, there's that. And what I would ask is that you like and subscribe to my channel, The Very Life. I do some hobby stuff. I do the American expat stuff, so there's that. But if you want to do me a solid, you could buy me a coffee. There's a link in the description box down below. And these people over here and they have bought me coffees, and I have to thank them because I have a lot of respect for them because they bought me coffee. And then on the flip side, there's other content creators and people that are expats, do hobby stuff or whatever it is. I buy them coffees, so it's almost kind of a wash. But any money that comes in, it goes right back into the channel, whether it's hobbies, researching information, sharing the information on how we became American expats in Korea. In our visas, I got a whole playlist on all that stuff of being retired in Korea. So if you're in a similar situation like we are, check out that playlist. And you can see what we did. Again, I've had some people contact me and say, hey, I'll pay you to help me out with the Korea visa system. And it's like, no, I don't do that. Okay, that's for Korean immigration lawyers. They're way smarter, and I can recommend a real good one. The one that we used is awesome. But yeah, I don't do that, and because things change, and that's not my full-time job. I'm retired. All I say is just enjoy the information, take it, send me an email, chat. I've done FaceTime with a number of people and a number of people who have actually come over to Korea just like we did, and they appreciate the information. So yeah, like and subscribe. That would be the number one thing that you could do is like and subscribe to the channel. If you want to buy me a coffee, that's gravy for me, but you don't have to. Okay, just do the like and subscribe. That is really, really what I would want. So that is going to be it. But the question is, have you thought about overseas retirement? Let me rant. If you want to go, I totally understand. So appreciate it if you got something else going on, but I'm going to rant a little bit here. Get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that, and now we're back to normal. I had so much junk on that page. But what we're going to talk about, I was going to rant about something. Retiring overseas and, kind of retiring overseas and what drove us to retire overseas. And it comes down to expenses and the ability to retire. There's a lot of articles, and if you do searching, and you'll find out that a lot of baby boomers, which are really old people, still can't afford to retire. There's like 50 to 75% of them are pushing off retirement. These are old people. I mean, I'm old, I'm 58, but I mean, these are old people. I'm sorry if you're that old. But a lot of these people are finding out that they can't retire, and they're pushing off retirement because of the ever-increasing expenses that they have in the United States. And we were in that same boat. When I started figuring out and getting a clue, I started doing projections and saying, okay, well, when am I going to be able to retire? I have a military pension. I have some other money. Social Security is going to come into play. Minimum age is 62. The max is like 70 or 67 or 70, something like that. I don't know. But, excuse me. So I started looking and saying, well, when can I retire? It all, income is one thing, but the big thing is your expenses. And when I started looking at the expenses, it's like property tax. Property tax where I lived in southern Colorado was going up a minimum of $100 per year. Every year, like clockwork. Sometimes it was 110, 115, 120. Sometimes it was just 105. But it was going up on average $100 a month or $100 every year. And so when you're looking at what is it? I think recently I took a look at it. It's like $2,500 a year. So you can imagine, say, okay, well, if I'm going to retire at 67 and I'm 50 something now, and you do start doing those projections, and you're like, okay, well, how much is that going to be? How much is my property tax going to be if it keeps going at the rate it is? That's a big chunk of change. That's just property tax. What about utilities? Gas, electric, water, sewer, trash, All of these things were going up. And they were going up in sizable chunks to where it's like I'm doing the math and it's like I'm not really good at math, but I can do that type of math and project and say, well, what does it look like with the average increases that we're seeing in all of these expenses? How much am I going to have to pay for these things? Property tax, utilities, so on and so forth, food, insurance, registration, all of that. And it was like, holy crap, I'm going to have to wait until I'm almost 70 to retire, and then I'm going to have to downsize. And the funny thing is that when we left the United States, before we left the United States to retire overseas, we ended up looking and saying, hey, well, we're going to sell our 4-bedroom house, almost 4,000 square feet, oversized car garage on a golf course, the whole 9 yards. We bought it as a bank-owned property, so it was a terrific deal. The market timing was just impeccable, and we had nothing to do with that. But looking at possible retirement, it was like, holy crap, we're not going to be able to retire until I'm almost 70. That means I'm going to have to keep working and working and working and grinding out at my job, which I hated, which was high stress. And I'm like, I don't know if that's what got us into looking at overseas retirement, at least for me. And then when I found out that we could retire to Korea because of the wife's ancestry, it was like, yeah, how much are our expenses in Korea? And what are the increases in those things, utilities and property tax and so on and so forth? What is the average increase per year? Well, they increase. No matter where you go, those things are going to increase. But they didn't increase at such a huge chunk like we saw in the United States. And our expenses are half, basically less than half, of course now it's less than half, of what we were paying in the United States and Southern Colorado. So it was a no-brainer. It was like, do I work until I'm almost 70-ish and then retire? Let's say I hit 70 and I finally retire. The average life expectancy for a male is like 78. So you get 8 years of retirement. The last couple of years are going to be crappy. We all know that. Last 2 or 3 years are going to be crappy. So really you're only going to get, 5, 6, 7 years, 6 years, 7 years of retirement. And what are you going to do? Are you going to actually enjoy your retirement? No, probably not. You might get the RV, might take some trips and stuff, but next thing you know, time flies and you're done. So seeing that we could go overseas and retire, we could retire early. And in that early retirement, like I said, I retired when I was 53, 54 years old. I'm 58 now, going to be 59 this year. Holy crap. Almost 60. Retire early. Yes, I'm going to lose out on funding my Social Security. So, yeah, I'm not going to make as much in Social Security because I quit working and retired early. But with half the expenses, I'm not worried about it at all because I've done the projections. And it's like, wow, yeah, our property tax for this apartment, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, basically a gated community. We've got security guards, got underground parking, got fitness center, all this stuff. Really, really nice place. In-floor heating. Oh, it is so good. Bidets. Don't ever wipe again. It's awesome. Get yourself a bidet. But our property tax here is like $220, maybe $240, $50 a year. Compared to the $2,500 a year in the United States on the house that we had. And the thing is, living in an apartment, guess what? Yeah, I've got apartment fees that I got to pay, but they do all the maintenance, they do the landscaping, and it still comes out to we're saving half. We're saving more than half because we retired overseas, which allowed us to retire early. So now instead of just having 5 or 6 years of retirement golden years, let's see, let me just do the quick math on that. And 78 years old. So I'm going to have 24 years of retirement if I make it to 78. My plan is to go to 85 and die in my sleep in good health. Just wake up and the lights will be off. But that's the plan. How that works out, I'm not sure. We'll see. But yeah, looking at 5 or 6 years of retiring in the United States versus 20 years, 24 years of retiring overseas and enjoying that retirement lifestyle. And I have to grind out in the United States until I'm almost 70. Yeah, that was a no-brainer for us. For us, it was a no-brainer. For me, it was a no-brainer because it was like in the high-stress job that I have, it was just like I don't know if I'm gonna make it. But the cool thing is that with Social Security, I'm going to make about 11, 12, let's say $1,200 a month on Social Security. I'm going to go ahead and start drawing that, so it's going to be reduced to maybe $1,000 a month at age 62. Boom. That's still on top of military retirement and some other funds. We are very comfortable. And again, there's countries out there that have low income requirements with low monthly expenses where people are able to retire on $1,500 a month and still be able to save money. And again, there's going to be this compromise. You're going to compromise when you retire overseas, whether it's going to be in everything. Everything is going to be a compromise. You might get cheaper and fresher foods overseas, but then the medical care in the overseas might be different than what you're used to in the United States. Some places it's better, some places it's questionable. So for example, here in Korea, I can go to a local Korean hospital and go to a local Korean clinic for like the flu and the sniffles and whatever, pay a little bit of money out of pocket. It's minimal at best. But if there's something big, I'm going to have to go to Seoul in one of the top 5 hospitals if I have something serious. But there's other people that are like retired in the Philippines. I've been chatting with a bunch of people who retired in the Philippines, and they're like, yeah, if you have anything serious, either you're going to go to Thailand, Korea, or you're going to go back to the United States to get that serious issue dealt with because you don't want to do it in the Philippines. And it's overwhelming. I've seen threads, Reddits, the whole 9 yards, and I'm just coming away with this that, yeah, if you have something serious, you don't want to get it treated there in the Philippines. At least that's what seems to be the case there. So again, there's going to be some compromises in care, but again, it's you need to evaluate and look and see what you can afford, what's your budget, what you're going to compromise on, and if you're okay with that compromise. But for us, just us, that was acceptable because it allowed us to be retired. It allowed us to enjoy our golden years for 20, 24 years, if I make it to 78, instead of just doing 5 or 6 and retiring in the United States. And yeah, I'd have more money in Social Security, and yeah, I'd have more in savings, and yeah, blah, 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 all that stuff. But with the ever-increasing expenses, really, is it worth it to only get 5 or 6 years of retirement? For me, it was like, there's no way. That is unacceptable. So with that, retiring overseas with the lower expenses and some compromises made up for that. But what I compromise and what we feel comfortable with might not be comfortable for you. And so you might not choose overseas retirement, and that's absolutely fine. And here's another caveat, not everybody is going to be able to retire overseas. I had a couple individuals contact me, send me messages, and these couple of people were just like furious with me because apparently they thought that I promised that everybody could retire overseas. But if you do the math and you don't have the income to support your overseas retirement, you're not going to be able to retire overseas. That's kind of a common sense thing. But these people were like, my circumstance, which was an individual circumstance. I'm divorced and I have alimony and I have child support. I'll never be able to retire. And it's, you shouldn't be telling people to retire overseas. And it's like, I never guaranteed that anybody can retire. Again, you have to have done the work and you have to be in a situation where you have retirement funds. If you don't have retirement funds, don't get mad at me. I never promised that anybody could retire or everybody could retire overseas. You have to have income to retire anywhere. And if you're in a bad situation or you had to rebuild your life and you don't have those funds, I feel bad for those people, honestly. I mean, we lost our shorts and we were able to crawl back, but some people aren't able to. And my heart goes out to those people, but I never promised that everybody could retire overseas or retire, period. And again, you look at the reports from the United States, 75% of people that are getting to where they could retire are pushing off retirement because they can't afford it. So again, overseas retirement is an option, and you need to see if you have the means to do that. If you don't, well, it is what it is. But I never promised that everybody can retire overseas. It is just an option if you have the funds. And if you have the funds, it allows you to retire early. You can enjoy longer golden years in your retirement. So yeah, I just want to make that clear because a couple of people have just really just blew up. And it's not about the retirement. It's about the situation. They're hurt, and hurt people hurt others. And people just need to vent. These are guys. And I had to let them vent and say, hey, one guy just didn't want to talk at all. The other person I let him vent and we chatted and stuff like that. And it was more, we went away from the situation both feeling better, and guys got to vent. And unfortunately, guys don't get to vent a lot. And so they'll just blow up. They'll hold everything in until they blow up, and then they hurt people around them. But as a guy, I understand, hey, go ahead, blow up at me. I'll take it, bring it on. And then, at least offer that support. So anyway, that's what we got going on. Like I said, like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. Buy me coffee. That would be a solid, but it's not required. Any requirement? Like and subscribe. That would be the requirement if I could put a requirement, but I can't. But those things would help with the YouTube algorithm, and eventually I'll try to monetize this channel. I'm not even monetized. There's a whole big story on that. But it's just something, another hobby that I do here on YouTube to keep me busy, besides going to the gym and miniatures and 3D printing and all of that stuff. I gotta stay busy when you're retired. So any questions, concern, email, there it is, comments, put them in the comment section down below. Like to check those out. And again, thanks for watching. I really appreciate that. And I hope you have a great day, great week, great year, as we are here in Korea, in our overseas American expat location. Okay, we'll see you. Take care. Peace.